This episode is brought to you by Cumberland Valley National Bank, CVNB, the bank that cares about you and your mental health. With their secure online and mobile banking services, you can easily manage your money no matter where you are. Whether you need to deposit a check, pay a bill, or transfer funds, you can do it all with just a few taps on your phone or computer. CVNB has a full-service branch in Louisville at 1325 Magisterial Drive off Old Henry Road, or visit cvnb.com to learn more. CVNB, Bank Better. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to Connections in Flight. I'm Erika Paramore.
I'm Sarah Mizuguchi.
Join us as we have another meaningful conversation today about navigating our current life flight. How are you, Sarah?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. The air just kicked on, thank God. I was having like a hot moment. Do you ever feel nauseous, like when you're like disorganized and then this like heat wave overflows you? Like I've been like, I don't know what's going on with my life, but waves of heat is not good for me.
I love them because I'm like a snake. So no, I don't actually.
So what's in your carry-on today?
I put my Kindle in my carry-on because I just read 2 books back to back. The first one that I read is a book called The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. It's a book for young adults, and my 13-year-old had to read it for school, and I read it along with him.
Did you love seeing what they're reading?
I really, really did. It's an amazing book. When I was reading that book on my Kindle, another book kept coming up for me to read on Kindle, like it would make a recommendation when you turn it on. And the book that it was recommending for me to read was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And it did not grab my attention at first because it said it was about young adults and the gaming industry. I'm not a gamer, but it kept coming up, and it was Amazon's top-rated #1 book of 2022. So because I had just read The Hate U Give, which was also another book, I wouldn't have probably come across that book for myself. I was like, you know what, I'm going to read something that's out of my realm of...
It's not by Jane McGonigal, is it?
No, it's by an author. Her name is Gabrielle Zevin. Both of the books put me on this thinking of how important it is to get outside of our comfort zones. And both books, to be honest, put me outside of my comfort zone. And the book Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, gosh, there's 3 main characters. 2 of them are half white, half Asian, and my children are half white, half Asian. I can honestly talk about this book for a whole hour on what those characters did to me, particularly one of them, and how it made me think about my own children. But this book, I cannot say enough amazing things about it. But the whole point is to read this quote.
Okay.
The other thing I love about Kindles is how you can hit a word and it tells you what it means, which I have to do like a couple of times a page because my vocabulary is so limited.
I don't have a Kindle, so this is all news to me. So I love hearing this.
The other thing you can do in a Kindle is you can highlight phrases, and also very popular phrases that are highlighted will show like 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 people have highlighted this because it'd be like a phrase that just resonates, would resonate with most people, I think is fair to say. But the thing I love to do is find things that I highlight that haven't shown they've ever been highlighted before.
Of course you do.
I mean, but
you're blazing new trails.
But here's the quote, and I feel like it relates so much to the podcast. It isn't a sadness, but a joy that we don't do the same things for the length of our lives. Talking about how we have to redirect, change the course. But I just thought, wow, it isn't a sadness sometimes when things end, or like you have to redirect or change course.
There's always loss with change, but it doesn't have to mean it's sad.
Right. Change is so hard. And I mean, just some of the things that we talked about and with the guest, like it is sad, but a lot of times there's beauty that you didn't expect.
The other thing we've sort of touched on a couple times, but makes sense in this quote is the growth that comes with it. Like finding something meaningful about the change allows it to be positive, even if it is sad.
Right. So I just wanted to share that. And I really wanted to share those books because both of them put me outside of my comfort, and it was just, I loved it. But yeah, so today we have a guest.
Yes.
Today.
And the word that she chose is reevaluate.
Reevaluate. And who we're talking about is Shannon Cogan. Shannon is a multiple Emmy Award-winning anchor. Currently, she anchors Wave 3 News in Louisville. She does the Sunrise and the Wave News Midday. She's 50 years old. She went to Indiana University. And probably, if I know Shannon, we'll be definitely hearing about her family, particularly her 2 twin boys.
I can't wait to hear where she goes with
I
this
know.
because she's always reporting stories on the news. But
Right.
we don't know much about her own story. So this
Well.
will be a fantastic opportunity.
Here we go.
All right, let's go.
Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just have to answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from an in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at a more affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/connectionsinflight. That's better, capital BETTERHELP.com/connectionsinflight.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here with you, Erika and Sarah.
I love it. Well, honestly, though, thank you for being here. Tell us where you're from, where you grew up.
So I grew up in Chicago, in the Chicago area. Lived in Schaumburg, which is home to the largest mall. It was home to the largest mall in the world. And I actually worked at Gantos. They had beautiful clothes, and I was in sales at Gantos in high school. It actually was a good job.
I bet you were too. I bet you were too.
Well, I love fashion, and so I was good at like finding outfits for people in high school. But then I went to Indiana University, and I was an editor at the student paper there, the Indiana Daily Student, and I loved journalism, and I thought I wanted to write for a newspaper. But then I had a TV internship in Chicago with one of the best TV reporters in the country, Chuck Gowdy, at ABC, WLS, and I just fell in love with TV reporting, and I was like obsessed with it. And that was all I wanted to do. And then I would spend weekends driving to Indianapolis to go intern at a TV station, and instead of partying and having fun. And looking back, like I wish I would have just not been that driven.
Because why?
Because I lost so much fun time just, being in college, because now I'm like, I can't even go on spring break coming up with my kids because I just don't have the time.
But you had the passion.
Well, I still do have the passion, which is pretty remarkable considering that, I graduated from high school, high school in 1990 and then college in 94. So, yeah, I still love what I do. But do I love that it means I won't have time with my kids on spring break?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
No, I think all three of us can relate to that. As a professional, like what do you give up in terms of time with family or flexibility
and that's what I tell all
tricky.
of the young kids who come in today. They're like, I want to do what you do. And I say, do you really, really want to do it? Because you're going to give up weekends. You will give up holidays. I'm getting up at 2:30 in the morning right now. Sleep is super important, and I don't get a lot of it. So after I graduated from college, I had a job in Terre Haute making $14,000 a year. I mean, I was sleeping on a futon, and all of my furniture was cardboard, and it was all very low. Yeah, like everything was super short. But I was only there for 3 months, and then I came to Louisville, and I made $25,000.
Woohoo! Big stuff.
And I was like, he offered it to me, and I was like, I'll take it. Give it to me. Yes. And then I went to Orlando, and then Dallas, and then Miami, and then to come back, I needed to do it for my personal life. So right now my schedule is, I used to do nights, but now I do mornings, and I get up at 2:30 in the morning, which every day when the alarm clock goes off, I'm like, what's happening? And then I'm like, oh gosh, that's right. This is my job. And then I stumble into the
Sorry.
bathroom, and then I go downstairs, and for some reason it helps me. I do a huge glass of water with one whole lemon juice. I feel like it wakes me up.
Yeah.
Oh God, I do like coffee with vanilla cream.
Then I do a cup of coffee
Yeah, the
black
caffeine's
with
coming.
one stevia. Yeah. Yeah.
And where in this story does your word come in? Reevaluate. Tell us, is that professional or personal?
So I was anchoring in Miami, which is an amazing place to live.
Oh, I
and
bet.
So
I
fun and
love Miami.
yeah, so cool and great. And we've been trying for many, many years to have children. In fact, when I was in Dallas, I did have a miscarriage. And then I finally got pregnant with twins. And when they were born, we learned that Cade was doing great, but that Colt, their fraternal twins, had a very rare congenital heart defect that would require open heart surgery. And the doctor came to our room because we kept asking, like, where is Colt? And the doctor came to our room and he drew a picture of a heart. And it wasn't like, the heart that you see in kindergarten that kids draw where it's like a pretty heart. It was like a real heart, and he's like, this is what's going on and he will need open heart surgery.
Oh my God. How old? Like, is this hours?
This was
after
that
getting
day.
birth? Okay.
This was that
And
that
Shannon,
night.
let me ask you, you didn't know this.
No, we did not know this. There was no way to know it.
So you thought you were having to.
Healthy twins. I carried them for 38 weeks.
Wow.
Oh.
I mean, and I did everything. I ate, all the eggs they told me to eat,
Yeah.
eat and slept as much. And yes. And I was super, because we wanted these children so much. We tried for so long. And I'll never forget the night that they came to our room and they said he's going to need this open heart surgery. I stood up and they're like, you can't stand up. You just had a C-section. And I was like, I need to go see him.
Yeah.
And so they did put me in a wheelchair and they brought us down and I leaned over him because he couldn't even be in our room. He had to be in the NICU. And I leaned over and I said, Colt, it'll be okay. And his little eyebrows lifted.
Oh.
He was like, I hear you, Mom. It was the sweetest.
Wow.
Yeah. So and then I called my mother and woke her up. So she flew in and Kendall's parents came in and it was a 5-hour surgery that was done the next day. And at that time, because they're so little, the size of the heart is the size of a walnut, which is incredible to think about. And the surgery took 5 long hours. And he said, well, I think the heart is fixed. And so we were ecstatic, but his lungs just were not clearing. Normally we have met many other children who have this condition. It's called total anomalous pulmonary venous return. It's TAPVR, and it's extremely rare. But most of the time, a child who has this and who has their heart fixed, they're able to go on to live a great life without any issues. But then Colt, 4 weeks later, was still there in the hospital. And my mom ended up just changing her whole life and staying with us. And I would go in the morning, she would go in the afternoon, and Kendall would go and spend the night. But Kendall he owned restaurants, and so he had to leave this day because he hadn't checked on them in forever. And so I went and they said, we're going to change a PICC line. And I said, I feel like I need to stay. And they said, oh, you don't have to. It's so routine. But I said, no, I feel like I want to stay. And so this was 4 weeks after the open heart surgery. And he was crying and they were changing the PICC line from his neck to the leg. And I was singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to try to get him to relax. And all of a sudden, he just went flatlined. And all the machines went crazy and his eyes opened up and he was gone.
Oh my God.
It was horrible. And I screamed. and there were two nurses in his room, and they turned it quickly because he was still in the PICU. So they quickly turned it into a surgical center, and they shuttered me. They got me out, and I called my very dear friend who was my OBGYN, and he said, I'll be right there, because it was 5:00 in the afternoon, thank goodness. So the surgeon came, and they reopened his chest again. They had to manually pump his heart. He was gone for 20 minutes.
What?
20 minutes.
Shannon, where were you? Outside the room? I mean,
I was right outside of.
I can hardly even speak right now thinking about this.
It was really like,
Well, and then to show up for your other child, who's also a newborn.
yes.
What was that
Well,
like?
he was at home
Okay.
and with my mom. And I remember getting back because I was breastfeeding him.
Oh, yeah.
And like my boobs at that point were like so rock solid
they
because I've been
were.
gone for so long. And I remember just holding him and nursing him. And my mom went into the garage, and I heard her like throwing stuff and like, like she was like having a,
Mm.
and I was just there crying, holding Cade. Yeah. After, and then Kendall like drove back, and so after the surgeon, Dr. Ricci, came out, and he said, well, his heart is beating again, because they put him on ECMO. Erica, you probably know what that machine is. It's called ECMO. It's like
Extracorporeal
people-
membrane oxygenation.
people were
Yeah,
coming
it's
by,
like
doctor's units, because they never even see it working.
no, it's insane. I know. That's advanced.
So he was on that for about 24 hours in ECMO.
What were they telling you?
He said, well, his heart is beating again, but it's 50-50 as to what his condition will be. He may not ever recover from this, or he may, but we just don't know. And I'm very aggressive, and I want things to happen the way I want them to happen. And this has been such a lesson. And you don't have control over those things.
God, I'm crying.
You don't. But it's been such a good lesson for me. Like, I feel like God had, he was sending me a sign, like, you're trying too hard to push things a certain way. And
I
know.
went through fertility issues too, miscarriage, all of that. And there is something about the personal struggle of when do I redirect this? I think when you're trying so hard to even get pregnant and so much
Yeah.
is out of your control, but you're feeling so responsible for every decision. Should we try again? What color lipstick am I putting on my body that could harm my body? I mean, there's so many little things that you feel responsible for that it's a mixed message to feel like, when is it safe to let go of control here? And a lot of times people end up, that's when their successes come with their babies, but it's a really scary position when you're not just responsible for yourself, but also for your kids, to protect them, 2 newborns,
mm-hmm.
and then to feel like, gosh, I have to give up control. When you said you were a planner and aggressive, was that your personality as a toddler all the way up, or did that come from your profession? How did you?
No, I think I've always been sort of that way, a planner. I'm the firstborn child. I'm type A. I had to change gears. After they were born, I was like still working nights, not getting home to see my children, dropping them off in the morning, not seeing them again until the next day. And it just was not, I really wish employers would do more consideration to think about a working mom and how
Mhm.
hard it is for us. It is.
Yeah, we're all working moms.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that,
Because I think everybody wants to know. So we're at about 4 weeks of life for Colt,
mm-hmm.
and he's off the ECMO. And then what happens with your life? Where is it that you're like, okay, now I need to reevaluate what my situation is?
So he stayed in the hospital for 3 more weeks, and we were finally able to bring him home, and we brought him home with a feeding tube, and I turned into a legit crazy person. Like, um, I would not rest. I would Google everything. Like, um, I mean, it was my life. How can I make him? How can I fix him? What therapies do I need to get him in? So I would get him into every single therapy, and I stopped drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, I
On a
like
mission.
on a mission, and Kendall, like my husband, just like took a back seat because I was just like a nut job, to be honest. I mean, like Googling everything I could. I put him into every single, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. And I was just going crazy. And I,
And there were so many unknowns.
yeah.
Nobody was offering you a clear prognosis.
And there still is not.
Right.
Well, and there's trauma. I mean, when you're in the middle of trauma and
Right.
feeling
I mean,
responsible
I witnessed
to
my son have a
yes.
cardiac arrest and
then
gone before me.
feeling responsible to keep him alive.
Well, we did have a nurse who came, and I remember I was like, I want to give him a bath, and I was so scared to give him a bath where I'd been giving, Kate a bath, but yeah. So anyway, I always thought I would end up working at the network, but then after the kids were born, it was just like it just didn't matter anymore, and I wonder sometimes, like, had Colt not had the medical scare and the conditions and because I mean, honestly, like it caused me to reevaluate my whole life in those moments when I saw him having a cardiac arrest. I don't know, what, like, what because now I feel like things are more, other things are more important, obviously, Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I mean, you were faced with something that probably shook your core beliefs about even yourself and what you wanted professionally and your ability to keep going towards these goals, these professional goals, because you realized that there's more important things.
Totally.
When did you go back to work? How old?
Sadly, I had to go back to work like after taking 8 weeks off. And I remember emailing, it's pretty sad. I remember emailing my boss at the time in Miami, and I said, I really am not ready to not see my children every day at night. Can I please come in, do the 5 and 6, go home for a couple of hours, and then go back and do the 11? And they were like, no. One time my child was in the hospital and I was at work and I was like, this is not right. And that actually was like, that moment was the hugest wake up call. It was a massive storm in Miami and Colt was super sick. He ended up in the hospital. This was like a couple years later and I was still working and I thought, okay, I got to change something here.
Right. Something's got to go. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How old were the boys at this point?
Oh, I think they were 2. Yeah. And then, I feel like God works in such mysterious ways. So my sister-in-law is a real estate agent in Louisville, and one of her clients was this man who was the general manager of Wave. And like, she's like, oh gosh, my sister-in-law is an anchor and, we would love them to come back. And so he would call me like every couple of years. And I'm like, Ken, I'm in Miami. I'm probably going to end up, I want to go work for the network but I said, I'll meet with you when I come there for over the holidays. And he just said, you know what? You come back here. Family is first. And it was like, I think that's such a God thing,
He
right?
said family is first?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was like family is first. And you
Wow.
can go home at night and see your kids. And yeah. So I was like, because I never would have thought of that to come back to Louisville, where I first met my husband in the 90s,
You were 100% sure when he said family first.
Do you know, I felt like things had to be they were difficult and so challenging and hard. Like, I just was like, I know I can't continue. And I just knew it.
Sure. I know that feeling.
Yeah, where you're just like,
You
I
have to
just
trust it.
can't.
It's like
Yes.
your own regulation in your body will just keep getting more dysregulated if you don't listen to it. So it's like shutdown mode. Wow.
Shannon, what year did you come to Louisville?
Almost 10 years in June.
So the boys were like, what, three or four when
Yeah,
you moved
they were
to Louisville?
4 years old.
How were things with Colt then? Were you getting a stronger sense of what life was going to be like?
Well, he could walk.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know if he'd ever be able to walk. And he could talk, but no one could understand him
Mm-hmm.
because his speech, and he had a cleft palate, and his speech was so impaired, and he had hearing loss. And so I continued my crazy person persona once we moved here and found like every best doctor and school. And actually, one of the big things that we discovered was Heiser Hearing and Language Academy, which I'm on the board of now. And
Tell us about that.
well, we still hadn't officially decided to come, but then we toured Heiser, and that was kind of like the deciding factor that we will come here.
Oh, that's
because it
amazing.
is such a special program. There was a school in Miami that Colt went to, and Kate also went to too, but it wasn't as, this Heiser it's almost like a private school, but it's not. Parents don't have to pay. It's amazing, and all of their teachers are educated in how to get kids to speak, and every morning they would test their hearing aids. It was just the best program for him. So now people can understand Colt.
He's 13.
14.
14. Wow.
Yeah. So now, when we first moved here, no one could understand. We look back at videos and it was a challenging time. But
Do they get along well?
they're very different. So they're fraternal, and they're going to different schools currently. They will go to different high schools. Kate is super into sports and athletics, and Colt is not.
So, Shannon, when you were going through those really hard times, the boys were young, you were reevaluating whether or not you want to stay in Miami, who was your support? Did you go to therapy?
So I did reach out to a very good friend who is also in the business, and she's sort of my reframer in life. Everyone says you should have a reframer who helps you sort of take something you're looking at and reframe it, because it can be hard. But I did also speak to a therapist, and I'll be honest, you have twin boys, and you have one who's super sick, and you're living in a city without any family support, and it's a ton of stress. Kendall and I had a very difficult time.
Thank you for saying that, though. I think it's so important to validate that comes with it for so many people. That's more the rule than the exception. When there's that kind of stress and fear and emotions and responsibilities, and thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. He would say so too. So, yeah.
And you're still together doing great. It's not like that was the end.
We're coming up onto
you worked
25
through it.
years.
Yeah. You have to be a team.
Yeah. I was listening, I think it was Mel Robbins, and I love her. And she was just saying, you know what? You find someone who wants to be with you, you better work that out and stay with that person, because life is hard and people are not easy.
Life is hard.
I think I probably was a really hard person to be with at that time, because I am such a investigator and a note taker and a researcher, and that's all I would do. I'd be Googling how to get a child to talk better, what kind of therapies, it was all I did.
The intensity.
Yes, and it was exhausting. I don't know when I finally let the gas up. I think was when we moved here, and then he finally started to make improvements.
And how fortunate about the Heiser, having that come into your life.
Much.
Because I know you said you were in crazy mode, Googling and researching, but oh my God, what a beautiful thing for your son that you were doing that and looking into that. I can't imagine, like you said, the level of exhaustion that could bring you to, working like that and having the stress. And like Erica's talked about, you also have another son the exact age that you're trying to take care of. So when do you feel I guess maybe I could say you settled in to the situation, that you're in Louisville, Colt has a good school. Did things start to feel easier at some point?
There's so much to be said for having just family around, even though they're not like helping you every single day, but just having family close. It was really hard being a plane flight away from everyone in Florida, in Miami, and having my mom so much closer. It made a huge difference, I would say, like right away.
That's
for
good.
me.
Yes.
And I keep this, I should have brought it in. It's this wonderful 10 things written by a child with special needs for their parents. And I have it hanging up in my vitamin cabinet. So every day I open it up and I see it. And it was like, you are the perfect parents for me. You are doing the right things.
Will you take a picture and send that to us so we can share it? Because
I've never heard that before.
I haven't either.
It was like, you can't change people's attitudes.
I'm going to cry again, I swear.
I mean, yes, I love it because every single day I read it and I'm like, yes, thank you.
He's gotten into be quite the equestrian. I mean, how much have horses helped him with therapy? And I mean, I know as a horse person, there's a lot of benefits, and like equine therapy is huge.
Oh, yes.
He used to ride Icelandic horses, which are gorgeous, and they're really good for children who have special needs because their stomp is so heavy. It's a saddlebred riding that he's doing, and it's not like any special.
Wow. Yeah. Saddlebreds are feisty.
What does he love about it?
I think he loves it because it's his thing, and his brother is into soccer. And
but people are either horse people or they are not. And there's something about him that must really connect to the animal, too.
Well, he knows his name is Colt. And so he feels like, I'm supposed to love horses. And
that's hilarious.
I know. It really is. But he does. And Wink, who is a dog we got, this is another, amazing God story. When I was an anchor in Orlando, I was a volunteer for Canine Companions, and I would raise money for this program. And then after the children were born, one of my best friends said, I think you should get a dog for Colt. And I was like, Nancy, he's not in a wheelchair. He's not. She's like, Shannon, come on. It's for more than that. And so we put ourselves on the wait list in 2 years. And like that program, Canine Companions for Independence, is just so amazing. I mean, they give the dogs for free. They've been trained for 2 years. They know 15 commands, 50. And that has helped him immensely with his confidence, independence, his speech. I mean, and just so many things. The dog helps with therapies, and it's his best friend. It's so sweet.
So that's a great example. Does that create an issue between the brothers? Like, did you have to get another dog to make sure that was evened out?
Initially, after Colt got Wink, Cade was like, I want a dog. Ryan, I want a dog. And then my mom got a dog and said, Cade, we will co-parent this dog. And then Cade was like, no.
No co-parenting. I love it.
So, yeah. He's not that much of an animal person like Colt.
Right.
Yeah.
Shannon, I want to ask you a little bit back to your career. So when you came to Louisville, you probably didn't see yourself in Louisville maybe after you'd been in Miami. So where you are now doing the morning programs, have you been able to realign all the kind of better bit of work balance with the children?
So it's amazing being able to be a mom in the afternoon and pick up my kids and spend time with them and make dinner. Before, I used to run home after the 6 p.m. news. I'd get home at 7 and I'd make dinner, and then I would just be barking orders sit down, hurry up, show me your homework. Get it, and it was
Oh,
not,
we know.
It was not a relaxing, and then I'd race. And
I love your honesty with this because it's exactly.
It was not pretty.
It's not pretty. Has there ever been a point in all this, because I know how career driven you are, that you just thought, I'm going to quit? Did that ever cross your mind? In seriousness?
I don't know what I would do.
Or,
Really, I don't know how I would.
It's
fill
kind
my
of your
day.
first child.
Mm.
Yeah, and I, and I still like, I don't know why I'm even embarrassed to say this, but I still kind of like what I do.
No,
You should never be embarrassed
no.
by that.
Like, I'm like, okay.
What makes
No.
you feel like you need to apologize for that?
Because like I've been
'Cause
doing
you
it forever since, 1994. That's a long time. But I still like what I do,
Right.
It's a part of your identity too. I mean, not just on the news, but like the fact that you had that passion way back in your internships, and I mean to
Ooh,
really
yes.
know that resonated with you, and it still does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as much as I hate, getting up at 2:40, like when I get there, I'm good.
Right.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
adjust.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, have you ever thought like, there could be a new life?
Yeah. I mean, after Colt was born, I thought I should write and this was like a couple years ago, I should write a book for parents who, I'll tell you, the thing about when you have a baby, like you picture yourself leaving the hospital with your babies, right? And it sucks when you don't leave the hospital with your baby. It sucks really a lot. And so we left with Cade, and I remember Kendall actually went home early and he made an amazing dinner. My mom was there and he got flowers, and because it was super depressing.
You're grieving.
Yes.
Oh, I was grieving the possibility of what I thought was going to be coming home with two newborn babies, setting them up in our room. And I was like, whoa, this is not happening that way. And so,
Well, and that's another great example for listeners who may not have words for something like that. There is a type of grief called the non-event. It's like if it's what's not happening that we're grieving. And like you said, it could be the fantasy of something, he's not the person I've wanted him to be. Or it could be that I wasn't able to have kids. How am I grieving something I didn't have?
and I have friends with that. And
Right. Or whatever, like if the dream you wanted to have leaving the hospital, it didn't look that way. And there's still grief in that.
Like you can't prepare yourself from that. Like you don't think about being pregnant and bringing home or not coming home with a baby. Like
It's
I don't,
trauma.
you don't think that way.
Never.
So, and I've been pregnant 3 times. I never once thought to myself, oh, I'm going to come home and leave my child in the NICU. I wasn't thinking like that. So it's like, and like you said, I guess this is trauma. Like
It's not a guess. Absolutely.
Acute trauma, right? And you just have to.
Well, and you've literally had trauma to your body with a C-section. Is there any insight you have now, 14 years later, Shannon, about how you process some of that trauma?
So when they were changing Colt's PICC line from the leg to the neck, and he was crying. And so we had the PICC nurse and then the nurse who was in his room. And they were discussing Disney Marathon. Oh my God. So when you so you ran the Disney Marathon, and then he flatlined.
Oh my God.
And then that just makes me so angry. Like, even if it's just the perspective for me as a parent. And so that's what I always so I've spoken before in front of healthcare workers, and I say, just at least give the appearance that you are
caring
and all in.
Well, it's minimizing the issue, which is not only a liability risk, but it's the lack of care. It's a dismissive. Why not just check?
Yeah. Or just be quiet and have your conversation later and focus on this. We did look into it just for people who are wondering, and it was just something that happened. So it wasn't that anything wrong was done.
Well, and I bet you have a whole different level of empathy too, Shannon, for other moms, and even if it's not about your child sick, it's a different kind of compassion when you've lived that fear.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's changed the way I look at stories and my life. And I'm not a particularly patient person, but now I certainly am. And I really do try to be one of those people who is like, I'm going to live in the moment, which is hard. It's so hard because I never,
So hard.
I was not that person before, but I really do try to enjoy those times.
How did you? I want to just circle back real quick about the anger part to the medical team. I mean, how did you heal from that? Because that is potent, and I'm sure that weighed on you. And I think anger sounds like the right word.
Yes, I was hugely angry, and that nurse never worked with Colt again.
Mm-hmm.
And nor did the PIC nurse. And we had a meeting with the doctor the next day, and I went into that just being a bitch. And I was so freaking pissed off, and
Yes.
you did this. And he said, and Kendall, I remember he was sitting there like, because he had not slept for like 24 hours. And I was just so fired up and so pissed off. And Kendall was like sitting there with his head in his hands. And the doctor said, I'm just going to tell you this. If you want him to make it, you have got to just change, because this is like, we have to be a team. We have to have good feelings here. We can't have this negativity. And so, yeah. So
How'd you do that?
I mean, I was gonna say that seems more than a conversation.
My child to live, you know. I wanted him to live so much, so I just did it.
Well, it's interesting. We
And-
talk about anger. People, if I say, what are you feeling, or what do you feel about that with the situation? So many people talk about the anger first. And if they think about underneath the anger, if anger is more of an expression of one of three or all three unresolved feelings, fear, sadness, and frustration
Oh yeah, I had
are what
all of
those feelings really
those.
are. I mean, exactly. And I think that when we can pause in the now and let ourselves just feel the fear, you were terrified,
Terrified.
and the sadness, which you're talking about, the
Mhm.
grief, and then the frustration is when we have an expectation that's violated, which, hello, right?
Mhm.
These nurses should be caring,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not. But that's, I mean, not that they don't care, but in that moment, that's how that felt. All three of those things were at its peak. And so learning how to kind of diffuse and let yourself feel like, if you think of a thermometer, 0 to 10, you were at 10s. But if we address in ourselves around a 5 what we're noticing, and we cry, or we talk about it, or we reframe, then it doesn't move up the thermometer. It goes down. So we don't reach that level of anger. But just to not be angry or express it, there's still that stuff in there. Where did that go? With the fear and the sadness and the frustration were all 10s, but it couldn't come out as anger.
It just went into my like obsessive compulsive planning and organizing and taking care and figuring out what I was going to do. I was like obsessed.
That makes sense. So it's almost like the resistance to having to let go of control.
Mhm.
You went towards more control in other ways that was much more adaptive.
And you know what? So I still am the same way. And it makes me sad. Like, my grandmother is 101 and she just passed away. My father had called prior to her death, and he's like, I don't think she's going to have much time. So I was like, I'll come. But I couldn't just go and like just sit and talk with her. I had to clean her whole house, clean her whole entire refrigerator, go through all of her papers. Like, I was like a maniac. And then she ended up passing away after I left. And I was like, why couldn't I just have been there and sat with her? And like, I was like, instead setting up like all the things that needed to be done, but I was doing it like after, and it mirrored, you
Mhm.
know, how I was after Colt got home.
Do you
Like
have to
with-
use that in your job when you're going into these stories that are so intensely emotional, which is why I can't watch the news, no offense. I can watch you, but not that. I mean, it's too much after a day of me doing trauma work with
Oh, I
people.
bet.
How do you, I mean, is it that you just said that helps protect you from getting too attached to some of these stories?
No, I don't think I do that in my stories. I think I'm just a person who just likes to get things done, and that is how, like, Kendall is cool with waking up on a Sunday and watching Dateline for like 5 hours. But I couldn't, like, I will never sit down Saturday or Sunday from 8 a.m. until I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I won't. you know? I just think, and so I just think that's my
But
personality.
I mean, emotionally, what would to answer kind of what you were saying about when you were there to help your grandmother, why couldn't I just sit with her? Why'd I have to keep going?
I felt like I was
is it a feeling inside of you that feels safer being task oriented and busy than just sitting in all of those feelings? You have a lot of big feelings in there. Does it feel overwhelming to be able to just connect to those quietly?
I haven't done it, so I don't know.
Mm.
I just find that gives me more comfort to just do. But now that she's gone, I'm like, dang, that was a lost chance.
That's very powerful because I don't think you're
You
alone
know?
in this. I think
No, I know.
when people are faced with these situations, you go and you start doing cooking, cleaning, and you can't to sit with someone in their pain or sadness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's uncomfortable. And we all go to what we know how to do. Task,
Right.
compartmentalization, go.
But it is protecting you from feeling the really hard feelings. You know, the busyness is a form.
Oh, I was still
Right?
feeling the feelings though.
Which ones?
Oh God. I mean, with my grandmother, and with Colt, I think I was just feeling helpless
Yeah.
when and I am such a person that I like to look at the future, plan it out, map it out, know what it will be. And so it's still very hard. Like, I don't know if he'll be able to go to college. Will he be able to leave home? I have no idea.
Do you have to reevaluate in every day of your life around this? I mean, are there is it a constant, the fact that was your word, the big reevaluations with work and stuff is one thing, but do you find yourself always having to sort of pivot or rethink again? Do you feel that kind of pressure with him still?
Now I just don't know if it's reevaluate, but it's just sort of waiting and learning and just and trying, because I feel like I've already done the reevaluating now with
That's
my
the
life.
patience.
Yes. And so, so I'm getting much more patient.
Wow. There's a lot of
Which-
purpose in that.
That
Patience
so
is a
true.
hard one.
It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Especially when you're not someone who, is patient at birth.
No, it's true. We all operate at different frequencies.
Right.
Thank goodness, though, right? I mean, we'd hate to all be exactly the same.
That's so true. Yes.
Shannon, I want to ask you another question. It's a little bit off topic of what we've been talking about, but I'm not going to lie. I've always wanted to ask you this, so now I'm just going to do it.
Okay.
Do you feel a lot of pressure for looks in your field of work?
Yes, the answer is yes. I'm basically getting ready for prom every single day at 3:00 in the morning, which is crazy. And the emails that you get and your colleagues get about, they're sometimes so cruel.
Critical of your appearance and
Horrible.
like tell us some bad ones.
Oh, like that is the ugliest shirt I've ever seen, or you're getting fat, or you look, oh, I thought you had COVID, but now you're back on TV and you look tan. Like, it's just stupid stuff. It's insane.
Does it wear on you though?
It used to, and it still does. Like, God, someone just sent me something the other day, and I was like, it was a stupid thing, but it's funny how it just stays with you instead of, like, oh, dumb, I'm just going to move on. But you just keep thinking about, oh, well, why'd that person write that? Because at the end of the day, we all strive to be loved and to be liked and to have friends and have people think nice things of you. So yeah, it hurts when someone sends you an email or a text or whatever, or a phone call.
They say rejection is the number one largest fear for human beings. And if you think about that, if your body rejects a medicine, you get rejected from a job interview or whatever, obviously relationships, but we say connection is the cure. What's the opposite of that? Being dismissed, rejection. You're out of the tribe that drinks the clean water. So it is primal. I mean, if someone's saying something's wrong with you and you want them to accept you, your brain is going to hold on to that as a real threat. much more than if they compliment you, because that's not a threat. It is serving a purpose, but it is interesting. You can get evaluations from work and 75 positives, 1 negative, and what do? We ruminate
you just
over the
focus
one.
on the
That's
negative.
true. That's very true.
But we do that because our brains are trying to protect us to avoid getting rejected from the tribe.
Interesting.
But your job is so public. I can't imagine how exponentially intense that is to feel the pressure of acceptance.
I'm just thinking too about I have boys too, and getting ready for prom every day. That's a lot. And then people telling me I don't look good.
My boys used to say, "You're like 2 moms. You're like the one in the morning, and then you're the one who comes home at night, and you're all done up, and then you're like 2 different mommies." Yeah.
Which one do they prefer?
I asked them now, and they're both the same.
If you were to say, all right, where am I in my life flight? How would you describe from a navigation standpoint?
I feel like I'm still just mid-course. I have a lot of stuff I still want to do, and I don't know what that is, if it's writing a book or, but I do feel like there's something else that I will do. I'm not sure yet what that is. And I feel like that's okay to say that you don't know.
Me too.
And it's very much about being in the now and patient.
Right.
The 2 words, that feels like there's a definite through line.
There are times for flights, where things are appropriate and not. And I have 2 boys who are about to be freshmen in high school. And so my time is kind of limited right now, but maybe in 4 years, I'll have a better picture of what it is, what I want to do.
You're also tapping into something we haven't talked about yet is sort of midlife questions where, I don't know if it's 35 to 65 or something. Is there's a window where we're not, there were eras of, adolescence and then teenage and then young adult. And then there's baby boomers or whatever at the end, but there's that group now, and you're 50, right? We're all kind of the 3 of us.
Thank you, Erika. Yes.
Well, we're all right there, but that is a time where talk about the word reevaluate.
Right.
It's you have a lot left, and you've also been through a lot, and it's we're reevaluating. Even the thing with your grandmother, that sense of time goes fast. Connect to it. You're doing that now by being patient and in the now with them in high school and not missing another minute that you don't have to. And but I think that time if 4 years will be here before you know it. And you're going to have lots to continue with your purpose. But I think from all that you've said is important looking back, you are connecting to this moment. And that's what you want.
Oh, I would not be the same person if I didn't go through those medical struggles with Colt. It completely changed who I am as a person.
What was the growth for you, do you think? What stands out?
Oh, God. I'm just more understanding. I'm more patient. I'm more accepting. Just so many. It's like when someone gets breast cancer and they're my girlfriend ended up dying. But after she got breast cancer, she quit her job, just did amazing things. And she was like, breast cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't say if I had a choice, obviously I would want Colt to be totally healthy and not have any concern. But, he is hysterical and just creates so much joy in our family. And it has made me stop and pause and appreciate things so much more.
Well, and to trust yourself to handle all of that. I imagine you have all these new resilience muscles that make other things, not that those other things aren't important, but your trust in yourself to handle them must be much stronger because of what you've been through.
Well, kind of to a fault, though, because no one else can handle it the way I can. You know what? I'm if I make a doctor's appointment, I'm oh, I can't go. Kendall, no, I got to go.
Like the sign says, you are the perfect mother.
Exactly.
You
are the right mother for me.
I feel honestly, Colt hit the jackpot with you, Shannon.
It's been a joy being with you two.
Oh my God.
You two superstars.
Right back at you, Mama.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Erika.
Thank you.
Love you both.
I really enjoyed Shannon's story. Very, very touched that she would share that with us. And something that came up during her talk that really knocked me out of my chair, I've never heard this before, that you said non-existent grief. And I think that should be the takeaway.
Oh, when we grieve the non-event.
Like what? I mean,
Yeah.
I never heard
Yeah.
that explained. That
So-
happens.
And thanks for bringing that up, because I do think that is such an important understanding, to be able to validate sadness and loss for things that we attach ourselves to that just don't happen.
Right. You sound like you're grieving a bad experience. Like there was no experience, but the story that you had in your mind, I guess.
Well, it's sort of the hope or dream or picture. You know, it's like we all have these life blueprints that we're drawing, and sometimes we have to rip them up and start over, and sometimes that's forced, and oftentimes if we put meaningfulness and purpose to it, we can draw an even better blueprint. But like if I think, gosh, by 30 I want to get married, and I don't meet the person, or I'm with the person who turns out to be somebody that, gosh, I'm grieving who I wanted them to be instead of what's really happening. But the permission that we give ourselves to allow ourselves to feel the intensity of that sadness or loss is so important. And it may not, when we are trying to make somebody else feel better or quote unquote fix it, give people these like positive ways to look at something. And if it's about, well, at least, if you can't have kids, at least you're not going to be too busy running around with babies. It's like, it's the minimizing, even though we're trying to be helpful.
Oh,
But
God.
that person, just to be aware that someone else may be grieving something we don't see
right.
because it hasn't happened.
Or, and correct me if this is wrong, but would an example be like this? Like my dream house, on an acre with a white picket fence burned down. I'm grieving that. But I could also be grieving that I could never afford my dream house.
Right.
Or
So the
something, right?
disenfranchised grief would be grieving the loss of the home. The non-event loss would be I never was able to buy the home.
Wow. This is really great. So
Well, good.
good takeaway to think about. And maybe how to talk to people when you recognize that that's the kind of grief that they have.
Yeah, it's like that's the perfect opportunity to just hold space and sit in their pain, because it's real, and it may not be something obvious to us, but we've all done that. We wanted to win the race, didn't happen. We wanted to get into the college, didn't happen. What am I grieving? If it didn't happen, well, now we have a different way to understand it.
Thanks for pointing that out. Very eye-opening.
Good. I'm glad that's helpful. I am always curious, though, to see how people talk about their word. Even
I know.
you.
Well,
it doesn't have to be a guest. It's an adventure.
that's right. Well, until next time.
Okay. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to us today on Connections in Flight. Would love to hear back from you. Please feel free to email us, leave feedback or comments.
We'll be back next week with a new word. If you want to discover more about us, please find us in our socials, and all the links are in the show notes.
Please be advised that the information discussed on this podcast is not professional therapy. If you are triggered or activated, please don't be afraid to seek professional help.
Ample. Hee hee.
Is this thing on?
Yeah, that's on. Don't touch that.